Welcome back to the Jim Paisley Podcast, where we talk about health, wealth, and the law. Every week, I will take a deep dive to find out more on how to optimize our lives, create wealth, and give you useful knowledge of the law that you can use to make sure you're on the right side of it. I hope everybody is doing well during these crazy times. Whether this is a good thing for you, whether this is a not so good thing, whether you're stuck in isolation and you're going nuts, I hope you're holding it together well. As you know, I'm a practicing lawyer in Atlanta, Georgia. I handle serious catastrophic wrongful death claims against most of the big insurance companies. Now, usually on this show, I try to get, when I get lawyers on here, I try to get those a lot of times that don't necessarily do exactly what I do, things that are a little bit different. And today I've got a great guest, Aaron Thomas. I've been trying to get him on here for a long time, and we were finally able to make our schedules intersect. Aaron Thomas is one of those fascinating people that you only meet a handful of these folks, in your lifetime. A little bit about Aaron's background real quick. He grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. As a kid, he was a classically trained pianist. He learned the guitar as well. He's multilingual. For college, after moving to Atlanta, he attended Emory did not go to Emory Law, Emory University for undergrad. And he followed that by going to Harvard for law school. Following law school, he did nonprofit work for some time, worked as a public defender, worked for Habitat for Humanity. As a public defender, he defended the indigent who were accused of some of the most heinous crimes you could imagine. And somewhere in there, he quit everything, and him and his wife went to South America. I believe it was for 6 months. Could be wrong there, but I believe that's what I remember. And they lived out of their backpacks on basically nothing. Eventually, upon rejoining us in the States, he immersed himself into family law, or what I just call divorce law. Keep it simple. So, divorce law, custody arrangements, alimony, child support, spouse abuse or neglect, prenuptial, antenuptial agreements, same-sex marriages, divorces, you name it. I've seen Aaron handle everything from celebrity divorces to affordable family splits on a budget. I wanted to ask Aaron personally what he's seeing in his practice with couples that are having problems, but they're stuck at home with each other, with forced isolation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet I also wanted to know what couples are doing right. What's the flip side? Of course, what's shocking to me about all this is it's not all doom and gloom. Even the ones that are going through a split. Can you even get a divorce when all the courthouses are closed? What if you're in an abusive relationship, you feel like you have no way out, and it's basically an emergency? Digging deeper, what about alimony? And what can you do to screw up receiving alimony? And he even tells you what the law says when you must stop sleeping with your spouse that you're trying to divorce. So many dramatic topics in divorce, aren't there? Aaron answers all these questions, and his message is clear. No matter what the situation is, you can get help and establish legal solutions to these problems. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Thomas. All right, I've got Aaron Thomas. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for joining the Jim Paisley podcast. So, I could talk about your intro, how you're the coolest guy in the world, piano, multilingual, traveled the world, backpacked in South America, Emory undergrad, Harvard Law, real underachiever here. So welcome, man. So tell me, in the intro, it is obvious that people know that you are a divorce lawyer. You are a family, domestic relations lawyer. How did you get here? You've been practicing, 15, 16 years? Longer?
Yeah. Let's see. I graduated from law school in 2002, and my path was a little bit different. I went into law school thinking that I would just get out and work for the biggest, baddest New York law firm that I could find.
Make tons of money?
Yeah, exactly. I spent one summer there and realized that that was absolutely not what I was going to be doing. Moved back to Georgia. Like you said, I was here for college, moved back to Georgia after law school, and ended up spending a couple of years at Habitat for Humanity in-house, so I could figure out what I wanted to do. And during those 2 years, realized that I needed to be in a courtroom somewhere. And that's how I made my way back up to the Atlanta area. I was in the Cobb County Public Defender's Office for 3 years. Got to try a bunch of cases and won most of them, luckily. And then a family law firm. The lawyer John Mayu, who's since passed, but is a legend in Georgia family law, was looking for an attorney with trial experience, and so that's how we kind of met up in 2007, and that's what I've been practicing since then, family law.
Since 2007.
Yes.
Okay, and a lot's happened. You know, you've seen economic downturns with divorces and family splits. And that's always, I'm sure, it's just sort of a wild card in relationships. And now, of course, here we are in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. It is the middle of April as of right now. Um, you know, it's certainly challenging economically for people. Obviously, a lot of people are losing their jobs. Shoot, I mean, the hospitality industry right now is non-existent. So I think anyone in there is certainly struggling. So, you know, me personally, I've always found family law fascinating, and this legal component of my podcast is just like, okay, I've got to get an awesome divorce attorney on here, and just because there's always provocative topics with regard to this, but you know, I always thought that I might gravitate towards that law. You know, my mom and dad collectively, between the two of them, 10 marriages. I think I haven't talked to many people that have outdone that yet, as far as their mom and dad together. I think that's pretty impressive. But you know, seeing that growing up, my mom and dad, they themselves were divorced when I was 2 years old. I think they were separated when I was born. So it was just one of those things. It wasn't necessarily traumatic growing up, but it certainly played a role of conflict in my life. And I think when I graduated law school and I started sort of, you know, that soul searching of where I belonged, I practiced in family law about 8 months, and then it became pretty obvious to me that was not where I was going to be. I think it sort of brought back some, you know, feelings that I didn't think were necessarily healthy. But you know, but as far as where we are now in this time period, in this sociological construct of isolation, where people are sheltering in place, not a lot of going in public. Kids can't sort of commingle like they want to. Neither can parents. A lot of parents, maybe they don't like each other, might be stuck with each other. What is this? If What effect have you seen? We've been probably on lockdown now for about a month in the United States, or in Georgia at least. What is this doing, in your anecdotal opinion, to relationships?
Yeah, no, that's a real interesting question. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about actually. You know, as we go through this time period, both you know my family personally and my practice. You know, what are we seeing from our clients? And as best as I can tell, I think what's happening is COVID is intensifying the dynamics of households, regardless of which side that falls down on. So if you had conflict in your home and you are you know you're in a relationship, you're married potentially, and there's conflict in your household, you now have that much more time, that much more opportunity in your house for conflict with your spouse. Whereas before you could get out, you had friends, you had work outside the house, you had other activities. Maybe you go to the gym, you meet up with friends, and now all of that is gone, and all you have left is this environment in your house that previously maybe you hadn't escaped from, and now you're stuck there with the spouse that you don't get along with, and so certainly I think there's on that side there have been issues with increase of domestic violence. The family law section, the courts have actually gotten together. I know that Fulton County now has special hours where they're offering to help people with their temporary protective order applications, or other issues that arise from domestic violence situations. And then on the other side, if you did not have conflict, you may have intensification of other aspects of life. You may have an improvement. You're getting more time with your family. You're getting more time with your spouse, if you're able to get along. I know you and I both have young daughters at home, 1 year olds, I believe both of us have. And,
Yeah.
I've been able to be around for some more time. In fact, I can actually hear her yelling a couple rooms away. But I've had more quality time. It's been one of the silver linings for me personally from the whole coronavirus situation is I'm still working, but you eliminate my commute. At least gives me a couple hours back. And my wife and I are not outside the house, so we could spend more time with each other. So um, it's kind of like absence makes the heart grow fonder or yonder. I think it's the longer version of that quote. And I think the converse can happen, when we're all stuck at home with each other.
I totally agree. Um, this is like anything, and I think this is what stress does to anybody. It is a pressure cooker. It can intensify whatever there is. If there's a lot of love in your family and constructive relationships, I think it can make those stronger. Whereas the opposite's also true. What I've sort of in my own head looking at all the benefits, the cost. I always do the cost benefit analysis of everything, just about. But I've been certainly focused and pondering, the two methods of this COVID, the way we deal with it, the shelter in place, flatten the curve, or the alternative is true. At what point does that have diminishing returns? What is the public health crisis of forced cohabitation when people would otherwise be able to escape each other? And that's what I wonder about. And I think give us another month in this situation, I think it starts to get worse. And I think even the good relationships probably have their breaking point of, us being humans, being the social creatures that we are. But do you have any thoughts about that as far as at what point does it have diminishing returns? Because I've got a hard time. I'm just curious what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean it's complicated, right?
It is.
There are pros and cons. I think that there's definitely an argument that the economic harm that is happening to people. You figure if you're paying your rent or you're paying your mortgage by working at a restaurant or by being a masseuse or another one of these industries where the income pretty much vanishes overnight. um, there's a cost to that as well. Are people losing their health insurance? Are people not able to afford people out there who are, I mean, I just think there are almost certainly people out there who are deciding between paying for their prescription or medicine that they need or paying the rent. So um, and it's not going to be equal across the board. There are certain, there are some people that are being hurt more than others. So, it may be difficult for us to measure the full impact of COVID until some of the dust settles and people are able to get back to work. And, hopefully, legislation will pass that'll ease the burden on people. But I think we all know that there are going to be a lot of people that kind of fall through the cracks. So, um, it's a difficult question, but I think there are people that are going to be hurt, one way or the other.
There will be. And one thing, one part, there's guests. I've been talking to a few, but I would love to have a CFA on my show, an analyst. I'm a financial analyst, not necessarily just an advisor, but somebody that actually knows what they're doing. That can give just real opinions into what this is doing to the economy. Because everything I read from, the big sources, the big hedge fund managers, big economists. I mean, the people that seem to have an independent outlook, it scares the shit out of me. So I wonder, there is a public health crisis in a depression, and I hope people understand that. So, but either way, back into custody and divorces. You talked about the dynamic of what's people are doing, the healthy relationships versus the non-healthy relationships. Let's get into people that have split up, families that have divided already, or maybe they were on the verge of it, but they're still together. What are people doing? Give me some good news before you give me some bad news. uh, what are people doing that is working, that is healthy, for ways to split, and what can you advise people in that situation. So just give me an examples of what people are doing that are working.
Yeah, even maybe surprisingly, because as someone who practices family law, most of the phone calls I get are not success story phone calls. People contact my office mainly because something's going wrong, not because things are going right. I am in touch with a lot of people who are split, and I'm seeing mixed things happening across the board. I mean, the good thing is, I would say, in the vast majority of circumstances, people are stepping up and taking care of what needs to be taken care of under very difficult circumstances, particularly these split couples who have children. They now have an extra 30 to 40 hours per week where they have to manage their children in addition to their jobs and the rest of their lives. And most of the people are doing it. The parents are, maybe because they're forced to, but they're stepping up, they're communicating where they need to. Parents who have split custody are being more flexible, um, and taking over if one parent has to go to the doctor or has an essential job, the other parent is stepping up. They're communicating more. They're talking about their children's education. How are the kids going to learn and still have some sense of normalcy during this time period? And a lot of parents are doing just that. I think people recognize that we're in emergency circumstances here, and you got to put aside some of the everyday pettiness or the everyday squabbles and do what's best for your kids. So that I'd say that's what's going right.
Let's go to the alternative. I certainly know those couples. I had a lady, great mom, but she's one of these folks that just, in whether it's deserved or not, she does not appreciate her ex husband. um, kid was on. Well, I won't get too much into the specifics, but just anytime that there's something to complain about on Facebook, and I think it was probably about a month ago when people were taking it not necessarily as seriously as they need to, right when they started canceling schools. Um, and dad still wanted to take the kid in public. She was flipping out. Of course, her default was going to Facebook and letting the world know what her lousy ex-husband would do. I assume that's probably the wrong thing to do. It's not constructive. What other Give me some bad things that are people doing. Give me the list of what not to do with some examples.
Yeah, yeah. And some of this comes from me in terms of what not to do. This is my own opinion. Some of it is coming from, we've already heard from several courts, Cobb County, Fulton County, DeKalb County. A lot of the courts have gotten together and issued statements because we're seeing the same issues crop up over and over again. And so, the number one thing that I would say don't do or try to avoid, or that people are doing wrong, is unilaterally making decisions about whether the other parent is following enough rules to deserve their normal parenting time.
And again, this is a
We are
universal rule, but certainly much more applicable right now.
right,
Yeah,
right.
unilateral decisions in custody,
Unilateral
always bad.
decisions are going to lead to some conflict. If you
That's
are
right.
dictating, the other person, or, to get real specific, you're basically saying, I don't think that you're social distancing enough. I don't think that you're safe enough. I don't trust you in your household. Therefore, I'm not allowing our kids to come over to your house anymore because I don't think you're safe. And we've seen people trying to pull rank or use the power that they believe they have under their parenting plan, under their custody agreement, to say, all right, well, I have final decision making authority over medical decisions. And so I'm making the medical decision that our kids are not safe at your house because, you went to work last week, or, you went to the grocery store without a mask, or I heard that, your girlfriend or your boyfriend, is still working. Um, and basically, what the courts have said is, no, you don't get to decide whether or not to follow your custody agreement. You don't get to just unilaterally decide to cut off the other parent's visitation. What I've been telling people is have a conversation. If you have concerns about the other person's social distancing, for example, give them a call or shoot them an email or text message, however you communicate, and say, these are my concerns. What can we do? What do we agree upon to keep our kids safe? And I think most parents are going to find they agree on more than they disagree when it comes to keeping their kids safe.
And I'm sure there are situations where people, they just don't agree on whether this thing is as dangerous as the other person thinks it is, right?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
so that's why they're going to church. For example, I'm taking my kid to church. It's, or, they're not having church services really anymore anyway. But I mean, like, um, if they're doing that, then I could see a parent doing that. So a mom doesn't like what dad is doing, or vice versa. They pull rank and they say, no, you're not allowed to go over to dad's house anymore because it is unsafe. I'm making a medical decision by doing that. What are the consequences of that?
So what I think, um, what I see courts doing is, so if someone refuses to follow their custody agreement, if they pull rank and say, I'm not allowing the kids to go over to, your house anymore, what's going to happen? So the judges are still working. As you know, Jim, attorneys, the legal services industry, we are considered essential services. So we're still working. The judges are still working, and there is someone on call at the courthouse ready to hop on a phone conference to deal with these kinds of issues if someone is refusing to follow their parenting plan. And I think that what we're going to see come out of this is that judges are not going to take kindly to parents who are using the coronavirus pandemic, using this crisis to pull rank and to harm the relationship between the children and the other parent. And I think we could see anywhere from on the low end makeup time granted to the parent who was wrongfully denied their parenting time by the other parent, all the way to the high end, courts ordering that the infringing parent have to pay the attorney's fees of the parent that was denied their custodial time, or even possibly judges coming in and saying, all right, you've shown that you do not have the ability to parent or to do what's in the best interest of your kids. And so we're going to modify custody and transfer some of your parenting time over to the other parent permanently.
Which
I think
also
that's going to be
affects,
reserved.
that has collateral effects, correct, of child support they might be receiving, right? If the other
Absolutely.
parent gets more time, it could negate child
Absolutely.
support, right?
Absolutely. It could switch from someone receiving child support to somebody end up paying child support to the other parent. I think that's going to be reserved for the most extreme circumstances, but I think it's important that people know that those are potential consequences.
Have you seen any of these extraordinary consequences dealt out yet?
Um, Not yet, because in my cases, we have been able to kind of, at least the 4 or 5 times when I've seen these issues come up, we've been able to head them off at the pass and get people to come to reason. Um, the good thing about the family bar, about all of the divorce attorneys, family law attorneys in the greater Atlanta metro area, is that there's a lot of communication between us. The leadership of the Georgia Family Bar has really stepped up and been communicating with the judges directly to try to come to some consensus. And there have, like I said before, Cobb County came out where all of the judges said, signed basically a statement saying that we unanimously agree that parents should continue to follow their parenting plan. Even though school isn't in session, you're still going to follow the parenting plan like school is in session. So, in terms of the times that the kids are exchanged, or if there's a spring break holiday or an Easter holiday under your parenting plan, basically keep everything status quo is the default. Of course, there's going to be exceptions. There's going to be an exception where, a parent actually has symptoms of COVID and they're still going out, and trying to get the child. And for those edge cases, absolutely, if you're listening to this and you're in one of those situations where your child's other parent is exhibiting symptoms of COVID, or is taking what you believe to to be risks that are in violation of local or state orders, then yes, reach out to a family law attorney, call my office or the office of someone else that you trust, and have a conversation about what can be done. I think in those circumstances, yeah, judges are not going to be afraid to step up if they truly believe that it's in, that's protecting the children's health or the other, the children's best interests, to pause another parent's visitation. Those are going to be options out there. But I think what they're trying to avoid is people helping themselves by just, refusing to allow the other parent to visit with the kids.
Okay. But that's starting to sound like sort of unilateral action a little bit. You say they have a sore throat and they have a cough and they want to pick up the kid, but they're kind of coughing a little bit on the phone. And the parent freaks out, and been visitations in 2 hours. They're supposed to pick them up. What do you do there?
Right. That's why I say talk to an attorney.
Okay.
I think in most circumstances, your best option is going to be to get your issue in front of a judge as quickly as possible and essentially get permission from the judge to allow you to take the action that you want. So, like you said, if you've got, visitation coming up in a couple hours, you think that
Yeah,
the
it's
other
4 o'clock
parent
on a Friday.
symptoms, yeah, what you're going to want to do is do everything within your power to avoid the unilateral action. So number one, call your attorney, see if you can get a judge on the line. If not, talk to the other parent. I mean, I know it sounds, insane in this day and age, but talk to the other parent first and say, look, these are my concerns. I'm concerned that you have, this issue. At least give the other parent an opportunity to say, what, I've already talked to the doctor. I've been tested. I came back fine. This is what the issue is. Or I have seen some parents say, look, I had an exposure, or look, I'm not feeling well. You go ahead and keep the kids. You're right. This is what's going to be best. This is what's safe. And if you can go to a judge and show that, look, judge, before I cut off visitation, these are the emails I sent. These are the text messages I sent. These are the conversations I had with the other parent. These are all the efforts that I took to try to avoid, just putting my foot down and saying, no, the kids aren't coming over. You're going to be in a different position than the parent who just says, nope, I heard a sniffle on the phone, no visitation, for the next month.
So establishing a cordial written paper trail, is that usually something that's effective?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can create a paper trail,
Texts,
both that,
emails.
right, right. Putting something in writing is a good idea because it helps, reduce any confusion later on. Everyone can go back and look, and there's no misunderstandings. It's right there in black and white what everybody said. And yes, worst case scenario, if you do have to go to court, it is good to have a paper trail so you can show this is what I said, this is what they said. But before you even start, preparing the paper trail for court, I think the more important thing is just communicating with the other parent. Most situations should not have to escalate to where you need the help of a legal professional like myself.
Sure.
Most people try to make an effort to communicate.
And I think those circumstances are pretty unusual, but they certainly do exist. I would say even the couples that I've seen in my neighborhood that have split in recent years, and most of the ones that just really, really sort of have a disdain for each other, for the most part, they all hold it together pretty well. And that's impressive whether we're within this outbreak or not. So that's pretty cool. If someone is in a situation, they were kind of thinking about divorce or splitting the family up before this, and they don't know where to start, or maybe this dynamic has intensified that feeling. What do they do now? You can't exactly go look for a new house. It's kind of hard to go look for
Right.
new apartments. That probably, I don't know if that violates, what's essential or not, but what can you tell me? Is there like a checklist of people that need a divorce or need a separation and they don't know what to do?
Yeah, what I would say is there is plenty that you can do to get ready for this transition in your life that you have coming up. And in fact, right now might not be the worst time to go ahead and get things started. While you're at home, while you have the time to, pull together all of your financial statements and kind of acquire the documents that any divorce attorney is going to want to see. The perspective is this: 90 to 95% of divorce cases are going to settle without your case having to go to trial. It may be after a little litigation. It may be after a lot of litigation. It may be that you come to an agreement immediately and you sign off on paperwork and your case is done within a month. But it is a small minority of cases, 5 to 10% at most, that's going to actually need the intervention of the court in terms of a final trial. So most cases can settle without you ever having to show up in court. I've done divorce cases from beginning to end where I've literally never met the person face to face, where we meet on the phone, we have a conversation about what we want. They send me their documents by email or Dropbox or Google Drive or ShareFile, any one of these services. We put together their documents. They take their documents to their spouse. They work out the issues that they have between them, and they sign off on the documents and we file them. And their entire case goes from beginning to end without them ever having to set foot in my office, much less a courtroom. And so, what I would tell people is go ahead and start gathering the information that you're going to need. And even if you want to set up a consultation, I know that my office certainly and most other offices are doing remote consultations. Mediators have all been using Zoom and other video conferencing solutions. So a mediation can go forward. You can certainly communicate with your attorney via email or phone. You can do your consultation. If your attorney is operating in the 21st century, they should be able to take your payment online. They should be able to have you sign a document online. And the only thing that you cannot do right now is go to the courthouse. And so, like I said, most cases, there's nothing stopping you from moving forward. My office, in particular, everyone has a home office set up. Before coronavirus started, everyone had the ability to work from home or from our physical office. And so, when the shutdown started, we really didn't miss a beat because everyone already had a home office, was used to using all the remote working tools that we do in our office. And so, from our clients' perspective, they may not know anything different from working with us normally, except for the occasional child yelling in the background. Um, that's what I would say to the person who's thinking about it. And I think there are people who do need to move forward, particularly if you're in a household and you're experiencing domestic violence. You do not need to wait for the shutdown to be over before you seek out and get some help. There are certainly things that you can do now to protect yourself, to protect your children, and protect your assets.
And that is something I want to come back to in a few minutes, but because certainly this podcast is about giving people useful information that they can use if they're in a situation like this. But what you said about preparation, and real quick, give me a roadmap if someone decided to move forward right now of what the next few months would look like if they decide to split.
Absolutely. So the things that an attorney is going to want you to prepare. First of all, I think that if you're looking to potentially getting divorced, you should decide what it is you want. What do you want your life to look like afterwards? And the way that I break this down, if you go to my website, aaronthomaslaw.com, and you go to the video gallery, there's a video on the 4 parts of a divorce case. Essentially, any divorce is going to have at most 4 parts to it. You've got child custody, child support, you've got equitable division, which is the division of assets and debts, and you've got alimony. Some cases will have only 1 or 2 of those issues. Some cases will have all 4. But if you can decide what it is you're looking for, is your case the kind of case where one spouse is dependent on the other? So alimony is going to be needed, or do both of you have jobs and you both earn about the same amount of money, and there's not going to be any alimony. If you don't have kids, then there's no custody or child support issues. A lot of divorces may just be dividing up assets and debts, but kind of wrap your head around, what do you want your life to look like in terms of those different categories. And then the other thing that uh, that a divorce attorney is going to want to see is, what are your assets and debts? Before you can come up with an idea of what a fair division of your assets and debts are, you got to know what you have. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, a lot of people will go into the divorce attorney's office with no real idea of what the assets and debts are. And so, one of the best things that you can do if you are going to be getting divorced in the near future is sitting down and putting together what I call a marital balance sheet. Basically, like a personal financial statement for your marriage. What are all the assets? It doesn't matter whose name it's in, whether it's in the husband's name, the wife's name. Uh, Put down all of the debts. How much is the house worth? How much do you owe on the mortgage? Vehicles, retirement account statements, the checking, the savings, um, whether something is inheritance or not, getting everything down on paper, and then a budget. What are your expenses every month? In a lot of households, you've got the income that used to support two people is now, or that used to, the income that used to support one household is now going to have to support two households. There are adjustments that are going to need to be made. And so figuring out what a budget is going to look like is going to help your attorney figure out, okay, what do we need to make sure that you can pay your expenses after the marriage is over? Do we supplement with alimony? Do we just, is child support going to cover it? Do you need to start looking for a different type of job or a different career? And so a good divorce attorney is going to help you not just with, the numbers and the ones and the zeros, but is going to help you determine, what do you want your life to look like afterwards. I mean, we are counselors in the true sense of the word. I think the good ones are.
Explain to me how this is such room for 10 more podcast episodes, but we won't. If you can briefly explain how alimony works in Georgia, what types of alimony are there? Could it be infinite, or is it just for a limited period of time versus lump sum, things like that?
Right, right. So in Georgia, alimony is based basically on two things. One is a spouse's need to receive it, and the second is the other spouse's ability to pay it. That's what it really comes down to. Um, there's temporary alimony, there is permanent alimony. Temporary can be anything from just money that's paid while the divorce case is pending itself. Temporary alimony could just be the retainer that the spouse with less funds or less access to money pays to hire their attorney. And it can go all the way up to permanent alimony, which is money paid from the spouse with more access to money to the lower earning spouse for the rest of their lives. Um, in today's
Seriously, the rest
day,
of their lives.
yeah, alimony can be permanent, literally until one spouse passes away or until the receiving spouse gets remarried. Um, Most of the time, however, in Georgia, alimony is what I would call rehabilitative, meaning how much money does the lower earning spouse need to bridge the gap from where they are today until the point where they're self sufficient? Um,
So, for example, mom has she was a lawyer, she has a professional degree, but she quit practicing to raise the family. They have two kids, so she stays at home, but then they get divorced. She will not be given necessarily permanent alimony, but money to, I guess, receive until she can maybe get back on her feet in the legal industry. Is that what you mean?
that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. Um, Mom gave up her career to raise the children, to provide a benefit for both parents, and now she needs X number of years of some financial support from her ex-husband. whether that is money long enough to just allow her to get back in the workforce, whether that's enough so that all the kids are in school or of a certain age. Um, yeah, of course, we'll consider kind of any circumstances, that the couple have in determining both the amount and the length of the alimony.
I think I was listening to a podcast with Joe Rogan and Bill Maher. I think the other month, and um, they were talking about, and I don't know if this comes from personal experience with them or not, because I don't know if they've been divorced or something like this. But this premise of you talk about the need, is that need based on their standard of living while they were married? And then I guess their point was, why the hell does that have to be the case? Why does it have to be, if you're married to a billionaire, why does the ex still have to live like a billionaire? Is that the case in Georgia?
That is probably the biggest misconception about alimony that I hear from people that come in my office is they
Sure.
think that the standard of living is the standard for alimony.
And that's not the
I'm
case.
only barred in the state of Georgia, so I can only advise on Georgia, but I can tell you that that's definitely not the case in the state of Georgia. I mean, like I said, the money that was supporting one household has to support two households. Everybody's got to take a hit in their standard of living. Unless you're just insanely wealthy, how do you maintain the same standard of living if you got 100 grand a year that's supporting one household and that's now got to be split amongst two households? Somebody's got to take a hit in the standard of living somewhere. So no, it is not. The standard of living does not need to be maintained. Certainly not in the state of Georgia, and I think probably in most states. I will say, interestingly, that there are other states. I believe Texas is one. I believe Tennessee is another. I could be wrong. Don't quote me. Actually have formulas for determining alimony. In Georgia, we don't have a formula for determining alimony. We have one. We have worksheets for child support where you put in one parent's income, the other parent's income, the health insurance premium, and it spits out a number based on the number of children. But there is no formula for alimony. In some states, they will say, okay, alimony is only going to be awarded for marriages of 10 years or longer. And then it's going to be, say 30% of difference in the parties' incomes for, X amount of years, a third of the length of the marriage, something like that. Um, and so, you can have guidelines on what, you might expect, but in Georgia, it can come down to the county that you're in. It can come down to the judge that you're in front of. Each individual case can come out with a different result. You can go in front of one judge who looks at a set of circumstances and awards 2 years of alimony, and go one courtroom over, and the next judge would say, 10 years of alimony. So it is sometimes unpredictable, but also that much more need for an experienced divorce attorney who's going to know the lay of the land in front of the courtroom that your case may be ending up in front of.
I see the good and bad of both. It kind of reminds me of minimum mandatory sentences and the point system. For example, in Florida, there's a point system to decide how long somebody should be incarcerated if they're convicted of a felony. And depending how they score, depends on their jail time. We don't have anything like that in Georgia. Every sentence is different, minimum mandatory. And I think, and I don't know, I don't do criminal defense anymore. You know a lot about more about that from being a public defender here, but I can see the good and bad in both. There's certainly, definitely a lack of consistency, I think, across courts from what I hear in family law cases. You have judges that tend to go one way, so other judges that tend to go another. One that they subconsciously tend to benefit fathers or vice versa, mothers. So that
No,
is that something you see?
no, without a doubt, without a doubt. And especially when it comes to kind of the trickier issues like custody or like alimony. I've been in front of judges that have um, where the parties come in front of them and say, look, we agree, we want to do 50-50 custody. And I've seen a judge reject two parents who have come to them and said, I want to do 50-50 custody, because they have a strong belief that it's in the children's best interest to have a stable, consistent place where they come home every day from school and do their homework. And so they just tend more towards there being a primary custodial parent and then a non-custodial parent who sees the kids every other weekend, plus maybe a dinner visit here or there. And then there are some judges who lean more towards you know, equal time or at least close to shared time with both parents, unless shown a reason, you know, that otherwise should be the case. So um, you're right. I think that, you know, there's a lack of consistency that can be, you know, frustrating. But the more you try to standardize things, the more you may end up with kind of the unintended consequences, like we would see with mandatory minimums in criminal sentencing.
Personally speaking, when I see judges meddling in when two parties have agreed on something, when I see judges meddling in that, I mean, unless it shocks the conscience or something like that, it makes my blood boil. Just personally, it just makes me
Yeah.
nuts. Whether it's approving a settlement, whether it's in the criminal realm where the prosecution and defense have agreed on it, and then the judge says no, that's not severe enough, or then you've got this situation where like the judge has this ideal of what the proper family is, and they interject that and they impose that belief on this other family that is, by all intents and purposes, getting along. It's constructive for the kids, and this judge decides what's constructive for a family that he has never met before.
I am with you 100%. I'm with you 100% on
Good.
that. And it's all the more frustrating when you have attorneys who, you know, the lawyers have been knowing these clients, dealing with them day in, day out for several months, sometimes over a year, gotten to know them, their situation, work with them, put together a parenting plan, and then to go in front of a judge who hears, you know, a couple facts for, you know, 10 or 15 minutes and wants to overrule what the family has worked on with their, you know, chosen counsel. It's infuriating. But
This
yeah,
reminded me of something when you were talking about alimony. If someone decides that they're done with their spouse, they know that a divorce for them, when this is over, quote, I'm out of here. There are things they can, but they think they might be entitled to alimony. There are things they can do to screw that up, correct? You know where I'm going. And the reason I'm going there is because I remember when I practiced family law in Florida, infidelity didn't matter. It didn't matter in Florida if you had a prenuptial. Even with the prenuptial, the lady that signed it when she married the billionaire, she went and she slept around after that while they were married. She could still collect alimony. She could still get that prenuptial agreement thrown out. There's so many requirements in Florida to get those things upheld, but namely the first thing I was going to talk about was getting alimony. Infidelity can screw that all up. Correct?
that is absolutely correct under
When
Georgia law.
And real quick, when is it safe to go sleep around? After the separation, after the petition's been filed, then you can go sleep around, right?
When when I would say it is safe to sleep around is after the ink is dry on the final judgment and decree of divorce.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, that's no fun.
technically under under the law, if it's after the separation, it's post separation conduct. It should not be relevant to the case. But we are humans. We are human beings. And if you and your spouse, if you know you're listening to this and you split up, and then all of a sudden you discover that your soon to be ex spouse is dating somebody else, are you just going to assume that it just started, or are you going to go digging to find out when exactly they met and how long this has been going on? And so, um, you know, some people always want, you know, a lot of people do ask, you know, can I date during my divorce case? And, you know, the answer is yes, you can. You always can. But is it going to open up a whole nother can of worms if the other spouse finds out that it's going on? Because most people, once they're at that stage, are not going to assume the best of intentions on the other party, and it can end up in a lot of digging into that new paramour's existence and when that came about.
This brings up just a funny story. I had referred you a client, and she had not filed the separation or the petition yet, and then I think she actually, and I don't think she had hired you yet, and I think that's And for a lot of my friends, I mean, I try to be just the legal voice. I mean, obviously, I'm not qualified in family law at all, but I remember her asking me. It's like she's like, um, if I sleep with my husband, will that screw up the divorce petition I'm about to send? So, sort of the reverse of cheating. What you don't want to. Hey, we're all human. We all got biological needs, right? So you want to divorce him, but you still want to get laid. I mean, but you don't want to cheat on him because that might screw up the divorce case. When can so let's do the reverse. When can you not sleep with your spouse anymore, and that would screw up the petition for divorce after you filed, right?
Yeah, yeah. So if you file for divorce, you are basically confirming with the court that you are in a quote bona fide state of separation, right? Well, being separated under Georgia law means that you are no longer, let's call it, having marital relations. And so if you sleep with your spouse during the divorce case, well, then you're no longer separated. You've broken that attestation to the court that you are in a bona fide state of separation with no hope for reconciliation. I have actually seen, this was probably over a decade ago now, I've actually seen a court throw out a divorce case after discovering that the couple had slept with each other because the judge said, you've no longer met the qualifications for the divorce, dismissed the case, and the couple had to refile their case from the beginning. So, I think that's an extreme circumstance. I've seen judges kind of poo poo it in other circumstances, but
But it's
yeah,
not uncommon.
technically,
You've seen it a few times. It's not necessarily uncommon.
it's not. I mean, it's not out of the question for yes. If you sleep with your spouse while the case is pending, you are potentially risking your divorce case being thrown out. Most cases is going to mean you just got to start it over, but it could be also really inconvenient, especially if you already have like temporary alimony or temporary custody plan, those kinds of things already in place to have your case thrown out.
If I'm the judge, then again, this is why I've not been elected yet. I haven't run, but I would at least see the silver lining in this case. It's like, yes, it, you're getting divorced, but at least you're getting along at some point, right?
Maybe it speaks to her. Well, I think it all goes back to um, a time. I mean, you got to think a lot of these laws were put on the books decades and decades ago. So, no fault divorce that came about during our lifetime. It used to be that you had to prove, the courts, the courts, the state, the United States had an interest in people staying married as long as possible. That was something that was deemed to be in the public policy, something that we want to promote is marriages lasting as long as possible. So, um, you know, the courts made you prove that there was actually a reason for you to get divorced. So until no fault divorces came along, and same kind of thing where you got to show that you're in a bona fide state of separation. Well, if you're still living together, maybe there's hope for you yet. Maybe you can reconcile. Yeah, I'm going to make you guys give it another go. Let's dismiss the divorce case. Um, uh, there's also a waiting period, right? From the date that you file your divorce, the court can't grant your divorce on a final basis until 31 days have elapsed. It's like a cooling off period so that people can't just you want to make divorce easy enough that if somebody's really in a bad situation, they can get out of it without having to come with overwhelming proof of cruel treatment or domestic violence. That's kind of the reason why no fault divorce exists today. But at the same time period, you don't want to make it so easy that people are just divorcing each other on a whim or while their emotions are high. So you have a 31-day waiting period in Georgia before the court can sign off on the divorce. Kind of gives people a chance to dismiss their case if cooler heads prevail.
This goes back to the roadmap that we spoke about before. So the soonest upon petition of the divorce, the soonest it can happen is roughly 31 days that a judge can grant the divorce. But generally
Correct.
speaking, how long do these cases last if people are generally getting along and agreeing to the division, the custody, assets, alimony, things like that? If people are generally agreeing, approximately how long do these cases take?
if if both spouses agree on everything you just said, custody, child support, alimony, division of assets and debts, then your case can take 31 days. I've had a number of cases where we file the case and we file the settlement agreement at the exact same time. So we actually do the negotiating on the front end, come up with what we want the settlement agreement to say, have the party sign off on it, and we file the complaint for the divorce and the settlement agreement that closes the divorce. It's like grand opening and grand closing on the same day. You file it all together, and then all you're doing is waiting the 31 days for the judge to sign off on the decree of divorce. So, yeah, a month is how long it can take. The average contested case where the parties don't agree, the average contested case in the state of Georgia lasts a year.
A year.
It can take a lot shorter than that.
So let's give people a little reality check. If they are contesting everything and they want a very effective representation, somebody like hiring your office, one of your former colleagues that you well respect, how much can they expect to spend on a contested divorce over the case of a year? This to me, your response tells me it's always in everybody's best interest to get along. You know,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. So I have looked up this question and researched it to get averages across the country, and the consensus is if you are going into a contested divorce case, you should just expect to pay about $15,000. That's for your side alone.
That's right.
Um,
And if you're the one with all the money and you've got a stay-at-home parent on the other side, you can also expect to pay $15,000 for their attorney as well, correct?
that's exactly right. The court's not going to just allow one spouse to outspend the other or to hoard all the access to money to get an advantage in a divorce case. So, yeah, and that is an average number. If there are significant assets at play, it is not. I have worked on a divorce case where the fees totaled over $1 million. Obviously, the couple had millions and tens of millions of dollars in assets, but um, yeah, I mean, the litigation can basically go as far as the parties want to litigate it, want to contest issues. Divorce is an expensive proposition, particularly if the parties do not agree. It's one of the reasons why I think that I am passionate about the idea of prenuptial agreements and people agreeing on the front end how they're going to divide everything while they're still getting along, rather than trying to settle those issues when they no longer get along.
And I do want to get into that. And one thing that's really clear about your practice is that's contrary to what most people might think about divorce lawyers, because you do get paid by the hour. You take a retainer up front, you get paid by the hour, generally speaking. And then when you do that, of course, people think, okay, well, your goal is people that say bad things about lawyers. They would try to say probably that you want to prolong it so you can get as much money as possible. But I'm like, I don't believe that's true, generally speaking, because you have to set a good impression for your clients, because most of your business is referral based, previous clients. So if you take all their money and clean them out, obviously that's not going to be good for business later on.
Right.
So I think what is obvious about you is you want to get people to get along as much as possible, expand your network, obviously, but you have something called a prenuptial agreement. That is not a prenuptial agreement, but is sort of the prenup while you're still married. And explain what that is real quick. And I know we're a little bit constrained on time. My daughter's got her virtual birthday party starting at 11:30. So we'll,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So first, one little plug for the work that my team does at Aaron Thomas Law. The last time that I ran our average contested case is over in 6.1 months versus 1 year for the state average. So we do make an effort to, not only to not prolong things, but to get people to the end, because like you said, we're a referral based business, and I want my former clients to be as happy as possible. I still talk to people that I represented 10 years ago, that I consider friends today. And it's also, I think, good business practices in that if you get someone to the finish line, you get them a good result, and you do it in less time and for less money than they expected going in, that they will continue to send you new clients for the future. So that's how I've structured my practice. That's how we've built our clientele and our reputation. The we nuptial can be a prenuptial agreement. It can be a postnuptial agreement. The we nuptial is what I built when I sat down and asked myself if I could draft an agreement for couples to sign that would make them less likely to get divorced in the first place, what would I write? And the we nuptial was birthed from the answer that we came up to that question. The we nuptial does not just deal with how you split your assets and debts in the event of divorce. It does cover that. But I think more importantly, what it does is it sets guidelines in place to prevent fights and disputes over money while the couple is married. So, for example, some couples that have come into my office for a divorce, they fight about whether one person's spending is more than what it should be. Very, very common issue. And one of the ways that we'll set that up in a renuptial agreement is for each spouse to have an allowance. Say they both get the same amount every month. Each spouse gets, say $750 to do with what they want. They get, it sounds weird to be getting an allowance as an adult, but
But
if
it's
all
mutual.
the
They
income,
both get it. It applies to both of them.
they
Yes.
both get it. It's their money. They can spend it however they want. For one spouse, it may be eating out lunch every day, and for the other spouse, they may pack their lunch every day, and then they buy a new Apple iPhone at the end of the month, because that's their thing. Or they can save it, or they can spend it. But they're basically, I've looked at over the years, what are the financial issues that couples run into, and how can we solve for that on the front end? And that's what we do in preparing we nuptials for clients.
You've written a lot of these, and you've put some interesting provisions in there. Like you talked about a mutual co-allowance for both parties, where they both do what they want, so nobody questions what that dollar amount is. What are some other interesting provisions that you've put in these we nuptials?
Yeah, another one that I like, that I think has helped out some of our clients, is uh, deciding whether or not you're going to loan money to friends or family and where that money comes from. Um, that is something, if one spouse comes from money and the other spouse's family needs financial help, I've seen that cause friction in marriages. And so it's a lot easier to turn down your brother in law's request for a loan if you can say, look, we have an agreement, we have a signed enforceable contract that says if we're going to loan money to friends and family, it can only come from this one bucket, or from my separate money, from my allowance money, and there's just not that much money in that bucket. Then it gives actually both spouses the ability to turn down some of those otherwise hard to deny requests for funds from friends and family. Um, Another thing that we have often requested in our we nuptial agreements is communication provisions. So, for example, my wife and I, we have our own we nuptial. She's also an attorney, and we drafted our own before we got married. And one thing we put in ours is that we would sit down once a year and talk about our retirement contributions. It's not something that benefits one spouse over the other spouse, but it's something that most couples need to do, and they just don't do. It's just something that a lot of people forget to do. And that way, we can sit down and make sure that we're taking advantage of any matches. At the same time, we'll figure out our HSA contributions, for the upcoming year. Try to, make sure that both of us have funds going into our 401ks or whatever the retirement vehicles may be. So that's another way that, it may not be reducing friction so much, but it helps kind of codify good financial practices for the couple.
Once a year, y'all do that. We
Mm-hmm.
I will not a plug for my own marriage, but we'll say that we've been good about it. I'd say typically we get together twice a year, and I think this is good for any couple. And I don't know where we got this idea, but treating obviously our household like a business, and we try to do it every 3 or 4 months, but it usually winds up being once every 6 months, where my wife and I we will leave the kids with a babysitter, like a grandparent, overnight, and we will go get away from everything, just a hotel, and then we'll basically bring the laptops, bring the Excel spreadsheets. We know exactly where every penny of our money is going, and we talk about number one what the budget is, knowing exactly what's going out everywhere, every transaction, of course, everything that is coming in. What are our expectations? What are our charitable contributions? What our, and with us, I even talk about, just because it's so closely connected. I'm a solo practitioner, but I talk about, just overhead for my business, and then what we can expect from that for the next 6 months or a year. And then it's just something I found that's highly effective. And it certainly, I think, put us on the same page. We were a couple that probably over 10 years ago, when we were living in Florida, we were house poor. We had a lot of, there really weren't that bad of financial problems. We didn't have massive debt. We did have to short sell our house, because of the mortgage crisis in Florida that just about everybody down there went through. But that was just one of those things we did when we moved to Atlanta and I started my own business. Was we started this, like I said, treating the marriage like a business, because it is. You are the CEO of your own family, or you are the CEO, or you're the COO, or you're both doing both. But I appreciate you getting into that. But real quick, I know we got to wrap this up soon. So if somebody is going through a shitty marriage, they're in a lousy situation, they need intervention quick. Maybe there's an abusive spouse. Maybe it's just emotionally abusive. The yelling, they just can't take it anymore. What is something they can do? And I'd like you to say, maybe it's easy if they've got some money set aside, they can call you. What if they've got no money? Their spouse has all the money, and they're maybe shielding it, and they need to do something quick. What can you do? What can they do?
Well, the first scenario I'll address is if, let's say, neither side has any money. Let's say neither
Great.
spouse has any. If the spouse has money, I would say still call me, because, like I said before, the court's going to give you access to those funds. But if neither spouse has any money and you're in a horrible situation, um, there are organizations out there that will evaluate your situation, potentially provide you pro bono help, and if not, can direct you to some of the other organizations. There are a number of organizations, the Women's Resource Center, for example, that will help. An abused wife who's in a situation where she needs to, escape a dangerous environment at home. I would also look at starting with Atlanta Legal Aid, or Georgia Legal Services if you are outside of the Atlanta metro area. And hopefully my contacts over there don't kill me for giving out their names as the starting point. But those are good places that can both, one, provide direct representation for the applicants who qualify. Of course, there are more applicants with need than there are spots. So I believe they do have strict requirements for who they can represent, but they also will know who else to send you to if you happen to be one of the people that they can't help directly. Um, I would hate for anyone to, be in a situation where, they're suffering domestic violence at home and not reach out or call anyone because they think that they don't have enough money to do something, or that there's no one that out there that's going to help them
And if
at
somebody
a
calls
fair.
you, if somebody calls you in that situation, again, I classify you as one of the good guys. You will talk to them. You're not going to be like, give me your credit card first. You will talk to them. And everybody that I've referred to you, you've been extraordinarily generous with your time, and you've given them sort of a step by step protocol depending on what their situation is. You've talked to them, you've listened to their situation, and you've sort of explained, that roadmap that you did earlier, and also the things that they need to do to get their shit in order, to make sure they're safe, protected, and they're setting themselves up for when you do file and things like that. So you will talk to people if they call you, whether or not they hire you, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And our goal is whether somebody's in a bad situation or someone just needs some advice. I mean, they don't have to be in a horrible situation for us to talk to them.
Yeah.
Our goal is if it's something we can't help you with, we want to put you in touch with somebody who can help you rather than just hang up the phone and say, nope, we don't do that here. Or nope, sorry, we can't help you. We want to at least give you that one extra step and put you in touch with someone, the legal service or the other attorney who's going to be appropriate for your case. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you. I wanted to get into stuff, and I think next time I have you on the podcast, and I hope you'll come back on, we can talk about more about prenuptials, and then if they're not prenuptials, we nuptials. That's basically the agreement you get after you're married. And I'd also like to talk to you more, of course, about the business of law and where things are going from here, and kind of what you foresee here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this immediate recession that we're in right now, that has not affected your business yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are still meeting with clients. I've done consultations over Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, and the phone in the past couple of weeks. I won't say that we're not impacted because I've had trials and mediations that have been put on hold or postponed. So I think, we're feeling some of the impact the same way as everyone else, not to the same degree as, the businesses who are, kind of service industry, hospitality industry, like we talked about before. But, the courts are, the one thing I would say is the courts are adapting quickly. Phone conference hearings, video conferencing hearings, those are popping up quickly. So I expect, within a couple more weeks that, pretty much every court in Metro Atlanta is going to have some option to have your case go forward, even if you can't show up in person. So, yeah,
I think that's
love
good
to come back to business of law and we nuptial some more with you, Jim.
I appreciate that. It is good. It's refreshing to hear that there are options available for people that are in destructive situations. You can still take action. You can't just lie down and say, I can't do anything. Yes, you can. And I do want people to listen to know this, to give you a call give me the number that they can call and where they can learn more about you, Aaron.
Yeah. So the number that you should call if you want to talk to us, set up an appointment is 404-969-1219, 404-969-1219. And I'll give you two websites. Our main website for the firm where we do divorce, custody cases, child support is aaronthomaslaw.com. That's AARONTHOMAS law, LAW.com. And if you want to learn more about our prenuptial / postnuptial solutions that we call We Nuptial, you can go to the website for that. It's WENUPTIAL.com. That's WeNuptial.com.
Excellent. Oh, that is so much information we just went over. It's great, man. But I love it. Thank you as always. I think there's people. I think the cynics out there want to think that, of course, it's just it's a slimy business, being a divorce lawyer. But I think you certainly dispel that in the way you practice and the way you help folks. So thank you for that. We will be back soon. And yes, I think probably in the next 6 months, I'd definitely like you back on. And if we could talk about those other things and whatever else comes up. Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. And the easy way to remember Aaron Thomas Law is, of course, we live in Atlanta, ATL. So ATL, thank you as always for coming on the podcast. And it's been real.
Yep. See you next time.